Hi, I'm Louisa and I'm going to just share a few really simple seated exercises which I hope will be useful if you're new to Pilates or even if you're perhaps just working from home or maybe spending a bit too much time in your chair. So all you need is a chair. Dining room chair would be perfect, preferably no arms, so you've not got any restriction there, and maybe just pop a cushion behind you. So we'll just come to sit on your chair, not like slumping all the way back into it, but finding your sit bones. Perhaps wiggle around, find even weight of those sit bones. Maybe you've got the cushion behind you. Try to line up the legs in line with your hip bones, and then try to make sure we're not squashing the knees. So they're not quite at a right angle, because hopefully your bottom will be up a little bit higher than your knees. So that should be a little bit more comfortable. But then we'll see if we can get the legs and the feet pretty parallel. Okay, so just wiggle and find your sort of most comfortable position there, and then we'll just work through each section of the body to try and get set up in the best way we can. So we'll start by just giving ourselves, also our feet, some attention. So either wiggle the toes a little bit, or perhaps you could let the toes lift and spread apart, and then maybe let them lower down little toe towards big toe if possible. It might be all or nothing. So just get them moving a little bit, whether it's a wiggle or whether it's that little Mexican wave of the toes, with the little toes peeling back down to the floor and then landing on that big toe. Hopefully that's just woken them up a bit. So you can just notice the contact point you've got with the floor, even weight between base of the heel and base of the big toe and the little toe. So we're not rolling the feet in or out. We'll then just try and travel up the leg all the way up to the hips. We've already tried to find that we're sat on the sit bones rather than slumping down into the chair. Once we've found that, let's try and lengthen up from that. Maybe we can increase that space, rib to hip. So we can let the ribs soften, shoulders can widen, neck can lengthen, okay? So try to sort of grow as tall as you can. I'll just show you that one sideways on as well, if that's helpful. So I'm just trying to find that length. It might help you find a little bit more length if you lightly press hands into your thighs. So perhaps you can grow that a little bit taller so the feet are grounded, but we're lengthening up and away from the floor. So once you're set up with all those points in mind, we've balanced out the load of our body weight, of our pelvis on our ribs and our head. Let's begin to think about our breathing. If it's comfortable, bring the hands around the side of the rib cage. And we'll just begin to take a breath in through the nose and then out through the mouth. So as you're breathing in, hopefully you can feel some expansion of the ribs into your hand at the side, and when you breathe out, try to let every drop of air go. So that wide breath in, that long breath out. So really just finding that expansion of the ribs, forward, sideways, backwards, so in all dimensions that you can. Just try a couple more. So that breath in and that long breath out. So at your pace, your time and your rhythm. One more breath cycle. And then breathing out. And then when you finish that exhale, just briefly come back to comfortable breath. And we need to just learn to engage our centre a little bit, which will help support your back, whether you're seated, whether you're moving, whatever you're doing. So we try to coordinate this engagement of our centre, which is the scoop of the tummy, and for some people it's appropriate to also include the pelvic floor. And if so, you'd engage from back to front and up and then scoop the tummy. But if you're a beginner, that's quite a lot to think about. So perhaps just begin to think about scooping the tummy, like you're tightening your belt or putting on some tight trousers or something like that. We need to coordinate that with the breath. You might, if you can find your hip bones and then let your fingers travel in a little bit. You're just coming back to your breath and then just begin to scoop your tummy in, and you should feel a little flicker of activity under your fingertips. So that's what we want to think about, and engaging that transversus abdominis muscle, which wraps around front to back and supports your spine. Okay, so and it's important that we try to coordinate that with the breath. So we're using the breath and the pressure and the diaphragm to help us, not work against us. So to do that, you would take your breath in through the nose again. And then as you breathe out, you begin to engage that lower part of your tummy muscles, and then you'd inhale, slowly release. If you're incorporating the pelvic floor, a bit more to think about, you take your breath in, and as you breathe out, think of a little bit of engagement from the back passage to front passage, and then the tummy. And then you would inhale, reverse, tummy, front passage, back passage. Try to avoid tensing everything, which is hard when you get started. So just give it a try and have a little play with that. We'll try it a couple more times. So you can take that breath in. As you breathe out, perhaps just think about engaging the tummy. And then you could inhale, slowly release that scoop of the tummy. Or maybe you're adding the pelvic floor, so take that breath in. And then as you breathe out, that little bit of engagement from the back to the front and then the tummy. And then you'd inhale, reverse. So just gently releasing, not pressing down, tummy, and then the front and the back of the pelvic floor. So that's kind of a little bit of setup that we can work with, and that's a really good foundation for any of your Pilates practice, or even just bearing in mind just posture, whether you're seated or standing. Let's just bring the hands back lightly onto the thighs again. As I said before, if you press them into the thighs slightly, it might just help you find a bit more length through the spine. And we'll just begin to shrug or circle the shoulders. So perhaps inhale as you come up and exhale, releasing down. So just trying to get them moving. Make sure we're not beginning to slump down again. So keeping that sense of length. And then you can let the shoulders just soften and widen, search for even more length through the neck. I think that we're being pulled up towards the ceiling. And I'm just going to tilt the head to one side. So if it feels tight and you feel you want to pause there for longer, to stay there for a breath or two. And then just coming back to the centre, and you're just going to tilt over the other way. And just notice. Stay for a little longer if you need to. So just a comfortable breath here, but we're trying to keep that length through the spine. And then we'll come back to the centre. And I'm just going to let the head turn once to each side. So perhaps look around your space, come back to that midline, and then other side. And then we'll come back to that midline. Okay. And then let's get the spine moving a little bit as well. So we're going to bring hands just onto your shoulders, and you might need to shuffle forward a little bit on your chair so you're not restricted by your cushion or the chair behind you. So you're sitting tall. We're going to inhale, try and find length. Exhale, we're going to just let the ribs, neck and head and the arms just follow as you spiral one way. And then we'll inhale, come back to the centre, keeping that length. So exhale as you spiral over the other way. Inhale to come back. So notice you're not sort of shifting over to go. It's a pure rotation. Perhaps imagine that you've got a pole or a foam roller behind your spine. So that's the only movement you can do right now. And it's just from upper back. So it's our thoracic rotation. Neck and head is just following. You're not forcing your head around. Then we exhale as we rotate. Inhale, we're finding length back in that midline. Keep sort of sitting tall on that chair. Let's just do one more to each side. And when you come back to the midline, you can just circle the arms here. So I've just got the hands still loosely at the top of the shoulders or near the collarbones. Comfortable breath. You could either stay with just both arms moving in this direction, or you could have one going at a time, and then maybe you add a little bit of that thoracic rotation, which is really nice to loosen up that area. We're not forcing, we're just easing, gently moving. And then we'll just settle down to face forward. I'm going to just bring hands down by the side, and I'm pulling up a little bit by the side of the chair to again help me find that little bit of length. And we'll just go into a lateral flexion of the spine now. So I'm going to inhale, just float one arm up. The arm and palm comes in. Exhale, reaching up and over. Breath into there. So I'm going to breathe into that side without squashing the underneath side, and then we'll stack back up again. I'm going to pull up a little bit on the other side and inhale, this arm floats up, arm and palm turns in, the arm slightly in front of my body line. Exhale up and over, breath into there, and then we'll lengthen and stack back up. Inhale up, exhale over, breath into there, and then we're stacking back up. Inhale up, exhale over, breath into there, and then we'll finish back in the midline. So we're going to then just try and mobilise the legs a little bit and the ankles. So you can stay perched at the edge of the chair, but you might want to shimmy back a tiny bit from there. Hands could be on your thighs or perhaps pulling yourself up to help you give you that sense of length. So I'm going to take my breath in, so breathe out, just begin to centre, and I'm sliding one foot along the floor. If it's comfortable, let that foot lift up, and then maybe you could inhale, flex the foot, exhale, soften, inhale, lower, and then exhale, come back in again. I'm going to just turn to the sides, hopefully you can see that a little better. So I don't really mind too much with the breath, as long as you're keeping that length through the spine. So I'm starting, exhale, maybe it lifts, inhale, you can flex, exhale, soften, lower, and glide it back in. As you're doing this, just notice you're not slumping into the chair, so you've got to keep that length of the spine. If hamstrings are tight, that can be a bit tricky. So we're getting a little bit of mobility through the legs as well as the ankles. And if you're sat a lot, it's really good to get that ankle movement going because it helps your circulation. We're just pointing and flexing from the ankle, keeping hips, knees and feet aligned. Let's just do one more each side. Good, and then we can just lower back down. It might also feel quite nice if you're sat for a while to like to do a little walking on the spot, but seated. Again, good to mobilise the ankles and get your circulation going. So I'm just peeling up one heel and then lowering that heel, and the other one comes up, and maybe you could alternately lift the toes on the other foot as well. Okay, so then we can settle the feet back down. We're just going to take our awareness around our glutes now. So I'm still trying to have that good position, that good posture. Just notice, you could have hands on the thighs or hands just by your side or around the chair. If you try to just gently engage the glutes a little bit, you should lift up slightly. So you just get that little engagement, you sit a little bit taller on your chair. So that is really helpful to get that fired up when we need to get out of our chair. And either hands on or hand by the side, as I mentioned. I'm going to just slightly hinge my spine forward in neutral. I'm going to take a breath in. As I breath and centers, engage the glutes, and then up we can come without hopefully too much effort. To come back down, you could inhale, and then exhale, we'll just sit back down onto that chair. Okay, so you can engage the glutes first, hinge that spine forward. That's coming up with that exhale and center to help you come up to standing. So I hope that's just been helpful, whether you're perhaps in your chair a bit more often or you need a little breather at your desk. So let me know, and thanks for joining me. Take care. Bye.